Now that I have my instrument connected to the tablet, and the tablet is communicating with my robotic total station, and I've also done a search for my prism pole, and now my robot is locked onto my prism pole and following that. The next thing that I want to do is I want to establish the robot's position on the job site. All we've done to this point so far is just establish connection. Now we want to tell the robot where it is physically on our job site. And to do that, we need to utilize our control points and shoot them in or measure them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to locate the control points on my construction site so I can physically walk over to them and know where they're at. The next thing I want to do is I want to locate those same control points in my map or on my drawing here, so that way I can select them and then measure them. So to do that, I'm going to zoom in to where my control points are, and I happen to know they're located down here by this electrical room. And you can see them here. Here's control point 1, here's control point 2 is kind of hidden in there a little bit. 3 is in here somewhere, control point 4. So those are my control points that I'm going to utilize. Now, they're a little bit hard to see, and what I don't want to do is zoom in and zoom out a bunch, because that just kind of gets me lost. So I can utilize some of the other features that we have built into the software, and one of those is layer controls. And if I select my layer controls, I can actually select from the map what layers I want to see or what I don't want to see. And in this case, I picked on a control point, and it highlights any layers that are associated with that point. And the next thing I can do is I can hit this button, which is kind of an all on, all off toggle. And since these two these two layers are highlighted, when I select this button, it's going to turn everything else off and leave just those points on. So now I don't have to zoom in and zoom out and wade through a whole bee's nest of points. I can simply just see the points that I'm after right now for this task. So I'll turn my layer button off, and so now I can very clearly see my control points. So I want to set this instrument up. So the first thing I want to do is go to my device and go to Setup. And when I click on this one, it's going to take me back to the map, and it's going to have a little piece of blue toast that pops up from the bottom, and it says, gives me instructions. Select and measure points to complete resection. Now, you have to have at least 2 points. That's a minimum. I prefer 3, if not 4. And the reason why I like more points is because it gives more triangles for the system to work with, and you can get better accuracies with that. So in this instance, I'm going to use probably all 4 of control point 1, 2, 3, and 4 to do my setup. Oh, and I should mention too, you do have the option to set the robot up on a known location. We're not going to cover that in this video. We're going to go with the easiest way to set this thing up. The first thing I need to do is select a control point. So I'm going to select control point 1 because I know where that is. I can take my prism pole over to it, make sure that my prism pole is set up exactly on it, make sure my prism pole is plumb, and then hit the measure button. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to walk my prism pole over, and then once I'm set up, then I'll hit the measure button. Okay, so now my prism pole is set up on control point 1. I made sure it's plumb, and now I'm going to hit the measure button, which is this button right up here in the upper right-hand corner of your tablet screen. You can also hit the OK button, on the hard button on the side of your tablet, if you choose to do that. I'm going to go ahead and click this button here. And what it's doing is it's measuring, it's letting me know what prism I have, what mode I'm in as well, in case, for example, I happen to be in active mode and I was shooting in passive. It at least lets me know what's going on. Okay, so I've measured my first control point, okay, and it's giving me some information down here, include point, and I can show the residuals if I want to, and you'll notice the residuals pop up on the screen, but because I only have 1 point, there really isn't anything that they can show me. Right? So the next step then is to select my second point. So in this case, I want to shoot in control point 2, so I'll select that from the map. Okay. Now, the computer knows that that's 6 feet. Okay. So what it's going to do is now I'm going to walk my prism pole over to the second control point, and I'm going to set up on top of it and get plumb and hit measure. But what I measure, the computer knows that's supposed to be 6 feet, so if it doesn't measure that exactly, it's going to let me know what that is. All right, so I'm going to do that now. Okay, so I've walked my prism pole over to control point number 2. I set it on the point. I made sure that it was plumb, and now I'm going to hit the measure button. Okay, once again, it's letting me know what it's doing. All right, and now it gives me some information. It says unable to calculate accurate station location. And what that means is this: the computer knows that the distance between those 2 points is a given 6 feet. That comes from the CAD department and how they place the points in there. And what it's telling me is that I measured that point, and I'm actually measured a distance of 5 feet 8.5 inches. So I'm 3.5 inches off. Okay, so it's just giving me information, letting me know what's going on. If I don't care about that information, I can uncheck show residuals. All right, and if I do that, now it kind of shows me where it thinks it is and what it measured. But the important thing here is this orange piece of toast. Basically what it's saying is I'm not very accurate. All right, now we do give you the option to go ahead and hit set and start laying out points, but keep in mind, showing the residuals lets me know that every point that I lay out could potentially be 3.5 inches off. This is why it's important to have more than just 2 control points. And luckily I do. So I'm going to X out of this piece of toast. I'm going to select my next control point. In this case, it happens to be control point 3. And once again, and it gives me more information, but I'm going to measure this point now. So I'm going to go ahead and walk again my prism pole over to control point 3, set up on top of it, and then I'll come back and hit the measure button. Okay, so once again, I've walked it over to control point 3, I set my prism pole up on top of it, I made sure that it's plumb, and now I can go ahead and hit the measure button. And again, it's telling me measuring. I guess I should point out too, you can mix and match your laser measurements with your prism measurements if you choose to do so. Maybe you've got a laser or a control point that's on a wall, and you can switch by toggling up here between laser and prism mode. Maybe you shot control point 1 with the prism, control point 2 with the laser, control point 3 with the prism. You can switch back and forth. All right. So just kind of a little tip or trick, if you will. So now what it's telling me is now that I've shot 3 points in, okay, now it's got a little bit more information to work with. And what it's telling me now is says the instrument position is within 1 1/16 of an inch. I'm still not perfect, but at least I'm not getting the 3 dashes, and I'm not getting the error message that says, hey, you're completely inaccurate, okay? That orange piece of toast didn't pop up this time. All right, but what it is telling me is that I'm still a little bit poor, and that's because my number here is not really what I'd like it to be. But the second point, I did a little bit better job. I was 5/16 of an inch off. So now I've got another control point that I can use. And again, this is why it's so important to not just have 2 control points. I've got a 4th point that I can use. I'm going to select control point number 4. And once again, I'm going to walk my prism pole over to it, set up, and hit measure. Okay, I've walked my prism pole over to control point 4, set it on the point, made sure the prism pole is plumb, and now I can hit the measure button. Okay, so it got that point measured. All of these points are now included in my setup, and what it's telling me now is that I'm still 1/16 of an inch off. So I'm not perfect. That means I either have a bad control point or a bad CAD point or something. However, again, I said you need 2 as a minimum. Now that we've got 4 points measured, what I can start to do is play with this setup a little bit. For example, I can take a look at these numbers and say, well, this is a small number. That's pretty good, actually, 1/16. 5/16, not so good. But this one right here, this is the one that stands out. This was egregiously off. So if I select this point, and then I uncheck and say don't include that point, look what happens to my instrument position. Now I'm within 1/16 of an inch. So what does that tell me? Well, what that tells me is that control point 1, it's off. Somebody had a bad day when they were setting that point. That's okay. All right. We're not going to use that one. In fact, if it's me, I'm probably going to go over and put a mark next to that point so the next guy coming operating this system knows that, hey, this control might be a little bit off. You might not want to use this particular point. All right. A couple things I'll point out that it's telling me. It still says poor. All right. That's a distance thing. I'm not very far away from my control points because this is demonstration purposes. All right. The farther away your control points are from your robotic total station, the better. The bigger those triangles are, the more accurate you're going to make this thing. All right. The other thing too it's telling me is that I'm 1/16 of an inch off. I will accept that every single day. 0 is perfect, but quite honestly, it's hard to be perfect on some of these job sites. All right. So now I've got 3 control points. Okay. I'm within a 1/16 of an inch. My robot, it knows where it is on the job site now, and I'm confident in going ahead and hitting set, so that way I now know where I am. Okay, my robot knows where it's at. It's got a good setup on the job site, and I can now start selecting points to lay out or collecting data if that's what I want to do. Now, if I want to get my points back, I can simply do this. I can go back to my layer, and I can turn everything back on. And then from there, I can start building a point list to lay out, and we'll talk about that in another video.